normally am, but here I am. And we can keep going. I said last week, hopefully that by now I would have the menus completely done. Fortunately, that's not been the case. I'm still working on the menus. I hit a few snags when working on the string sharing, but I'm pretty sure I'm over them now. So the snags are done. I haven't finished the string sharing. The issue is that the string sharing is a little bit tricky. Why not? It's got a hat today. Basically because there's a lot that can go wrong with it. So, I mean, if you imagine like the names of things messing things up, so you have a duplicate name, it gets confused which option selected, etc. That didn't last long. So that's what I'm tackling now. The stream will probably be, I'll stream probably until about 4:30, so about an hour and a quarter. And during that time, I want to talk about, I'm going to start some work and then I'm going to start talking about the recent optimization work that's going on with the game and where that's leading us. Okay. So at the minute, what I'm looking at is the setup name. So if you create a new setup, I want it to check the name to make sure the name doesn't already exist. If the name does already exist, it's going to make a suggestion of a name. So for example, which is just going to be with a number at the end. So example, if you try and make one called custom, but there's already a default one called custom, it will suggest custom 2. Hi Raptor, good to have you back. And it won't necessarily suggest this to the player. If you're importing a setup, it will automatically plug it in and save it as the version with the number at the end. And if you don't like it yourself, you can go in, save it as something else and delete it. Delete the other one. Okay, so that's basically what I'm doing at the minute. So I'm just building a system that is going to check a name to check that it doesn't already exist. If it does already exist, it's going to give the name with the next number along. Okay, so is setup name acceptable? So it needs an input parameter, which is just going to be a string. Name to test. And what it's going to do is it's going to cycle through a few things. First, it's going to cycle through the pre-setups. Then cycle through the... I need an example of it. There are examples of it around here somewhere. Not there. There should be something called setup. There should be a function called setup somewhere. There we are. Which has the perfect example of it. So this is it cycling through all Freeplay setups, checking they exist. They exist. It's adding them into the slot. Right, so I might actually be able to use the slot. I can probably actually use the slot or even the drop-down list to check this. What's the menus? What the... Breaks down the door. I made it. Okay, so these are the new Freeplay setup menus. So this is like the simplified version, and then the advanced version's got all the other options in. But you can also export everything as a string or import it from a string. And basically, I'm going through and trying to figure out what all the pitfalls of doing this is, what things players will do, and how I'm going to fix that. What will players do with this? I'm sure they'll do everything possible, and it will break, and it will be glorious. Okay, so string to Freeplay setup. No. What am I talking about? Completely lost track of what I was doing. Okay. So I'm just going to have it cycle through. To be fair, to save a massive amount of faff, I'm going to have it cycle through the actual options that the player's got, because that should cover everything. So the options that the options that's in the player's setup box are so there's add option text, clear options, find option index text, get option at index text, option count, get selected options, refresh options, remove option text, set selected option. Okay, so I think what I need to do is just for loop through this with it. So get option count. I don't need the pre-setups either. That's dealt with elsewhere. So that's finding the option at a certain index. Need a for loop. The number of options. So the question is, I'm assuming that's going to be, so if there's one option in the box, the last index should be 0. So we actually need to -1 from this. One option in the box will be option 0, 2 options will be option 0, 1, 3 options will be option 0, 1, 2, etc, etc, etc. So essentially we need to cycle through, first index being 0, last index with only one option should be 0, only check 0. Okay, so we're cycling through the options in the box. Okay, so if the option in the box is the same as the option that we're testing, then the name is not acceptable. Hello, what are the other devs working on? The other devs are working on optimization at the moment, and I have something to discuss with you about that actually. I may as well start talking about it now whilst I'm doing this. So currently the way the game works is we use the Unreal Engine's character component and the character movement component. Now we've got away with this so far. However, it is a character component that's been designed for first-person shooter games, or third-person, or whatever you want to talk about. But it's not been designed for a real-time strategy game. So with that comes a lot of overhead. So the character object that we're using is the same sort of thing that you'd use in a first-person shooter game, and you can imagine there's a lot of stuff going on there that we don't need. Stuff like the physics of the movement and whatnot. And as such, we've reached the decision that it's time to replace it. Now, character isn't a small... It's not a small object. It's big. If you imagine everything in our game as a character as well, it affects everything. Not everything in our game, but every creature in the game is one of these characters. Yeah, that's exactly why it gets laggy when there's over 150 ants. People with really high-end computers can go further than that, but not everyone's got a really high-end computer. Unfortunately, when we do this, and Matt started on it today, he'd been up to today, and since the meeting we had, he'd been running optimization. He'd been working out optimizations, things that will speed the game up, and he's already doubled the performance, which is a great start. But he's hit the point now where any more that he does to optimizations is going to be kind of pointless, because the bottleneck is actually this movement, this character movement that's based on FPS. Character movement. Well, with the engine options, if you're making an indie game, the two big engine options that you don't have to pay for up front are Unity and Unreal. Now, Unreal is open source, which means we can actually go in and really change things deep down in the engine if we wanted. We're not going to. We're instead we're going to make something that runs alongside it. But in our initial research, and I still think we're right, is that Unreal Engine is the more adaptable of the two. Plus, it's C++, which gives us more control over deeper things. Yeah, that's about right. We're gonna replace this character component, and in doing so, we expect to get a significant performance boost. The movement code should be 6 to 8 times faster under a new system, which means, and that doesn't necessarily mean the whole game will run 6 to 8 times faster, but it does mean that the movement system will no longer be the bottleneck in it. So and as such, adding more creatures to the level won't necessarily be will probably be less of a problem. So yeah, bigger armies should become a better possibility. Also, running it on lower hardware will be more possible. But this is but we're gonna Matt's currently running tests. He's gonna make some initial attempts at it, and then hopefully by the weekend he'll have some more answers for us. So by next week, and Mike's going to write the newsletter over the weekend, and include some of Matt's conclusions in the newsletter. But hopefully his conclusions will be that we'll get significant performance boosts and all the good stuff. The downside of this is that the game is going to be essentially dissected. Well, not the game, but the creature component, which is a massive chunk of the game, is going to be dissected on an operating table. And we're going to be only putting the stuff back into it that we need, and rewriting certain things. Liam has already rewritten a lot of the movement code, but this will be an extra layer to rewrite on top of that. But whilst that's happening, we can't release anything in the game. Now, we had a debate today. Before I go on about that, I'm going to come back to the chat for a second. Some of our computers can't handle this amount of units. Hopefully these changes will help that significantly. I did some programming 10 years ago. I never saw this box programming interface that's so much better than C++. It's good for prototyping. It actually has its own overhead. So the blueprints, they are slower than doing stuff in C++. So a lot of the game is still done in C++. But for example, this, which is interface design, the overhead with it's small compared to everything else, so it really doesn't matter if we do it in blueprints. Carrying on. I'm used to the white boxes. Is that why the cap for ants in the campaign is so little due to the engine? Yes, kind of. The cap in the campaign, particularly in the campaign challenge levels, was actually originally introduced because we didn't want the player having too big a army going on to the next challenge, because they, with these gaps in between us releasing the updates, players grind out loads of stuff and upgrade their units and make huge armies. However, we've moved away from that a bit now anyway, in that we did the Formicarium refresh with the Leafcutter update, and I think we're going to keep doing that going forward. So each time there's like a major update, your Formicarium, you get given a load of royal jelly for your Formicarium stuff, and you have to remake the Formicarium again. Carrying on. Or can you say that the game will molt and grow? Cool, because it's a game about insects. Sure. Yeah, we'll molt the old character component off and grow ourselves into a beautiful butterfly of a new one. Guys, you're great. That make me have many more hope for the project. Is there a plan for you guys to tell us your ideas of the features in the final game? Right, adaptancy on the spot. We know where we're going with the game, and we have a few feature things planned, some interesting stuff, but we're not quite ready yet to announce exactly what's going forward, exactly what's going to happen going forward. I just mentioned that if you look at our Kickstarter goals, that'll give you some hints of some of the stretch goals. That'll give you some hints of some of the things going forward. So I can't remember what I was saying a while ago. So the downside of this, so the upside is that it'll run better. We're still not it's going to require some tests to figure out everything, and it's definitely going to break the game in multiple ways, and we're going to need to retest stuff afterwards. But the downside is that this could take a little while, so it's going to require some patience, because the game is going to be broken for a little bit whilst we take it apart and take apart the creature movement and put it back together. Okay, feels like we're left in the infinite space to know if there's going to be PvP, which, you know, growth campaign impacts the player decision. We're definitely planning enemy colonies in the game. I'll say that. I mean, they're already in the campaign in some respect. We're definitely planning, though, to have like a skirmish against enemy colonies. We're very careful about promising things like multiplayer, because it is a big undertaking, and it is difficult to retrofit, and also it brings up all the balance issues. So as soon as you've got multiplayer, you've got to make sure everything's nice and lean and balanced. But I never say never. And certainly improved movement performance is something that would be required for that. You've been waiting 7 years for Star Citizen. Yeah, I think you're going to have to keep waiting for that one. Okay. So we've had the talk. Right, so I'll get back to this menu then. But yeah, feel free to ask questions. I can't tell you. At the moment, we're not sure. Because of these optimizations, it's still going to take a while. The aim with this Freeplay update now will be for this Freeplay update to come out at the same time as these optimizations that we're bringing in, and the idea behind that being that in Freeplay mode you can get a lot of creatures in the level. So Freeplay mode should be a really good test of the new movement systems and army sizes, and we'll see. But if it works out, we might be able to relax the Freeplay population counts a bit and that sort of thing. And the former carrion population counts and that sort of thing could be relaxed. And maybe some of the final missions of the game, we won't have to have a really early ant colony. It can be slightly... you can be playing one that's slightly older, that has more than 100 members. But yeah, this is happening. Matt's looking at it right now. Liam has also been optimizing things, because someone asked earlier what the other team members doing. At the moment, the way, right, in the current build of the game, the way that creatures look for enemies to attack is they essentially create a sphere around them, and they look at all the objects in the sphere, all the enemy creatures in the sphere, and they make a decision based on that. It's pretty much always the closest enemy. There's some odd occasions where it's not, but pretty much always that. Liam has changed that, so we sweep a sphere. So a sphere comes out as an orb from the creature, and the first thing it hits, if it can attack it, it goes for that. So that was a decent optimization there. he's also, but in doing that, because the way the auras work at the minute, the leafcutter auras, they applied to ants as it looked in the sphere. It just applied them to the other ants. Liam's changing that, so auras are actually tile based now. So your ant standing on a tile, it activates auras on nearby tiles. So any ants that are standing on those tiles receive the aura. So there's a change in the way that's working. That's what Liam was working on last week. Apparently creating different problems for us to solve than just adding more insects. Right, one of the Freeplay, one of the updates coming with this Freeplay update when it does come out is, have a look at the advanced. Oh no, it's not advanced, it's just Freeplay setup. Is the victory condition here. With this, I'm hoping that, and I've added a few victory conditions in, which we'll take a look at in a moment. But the idea with this setup, and you'll be able to save it and share it as a string with others, is that people should be able to create their own game setups, which will give people the ability to share challenges with each other, essentially. But also, the challenges can have a victory condition associated with it. The victory conditions, if we have a quick look, I think I've put tooltips for them in already. So there's growth, which is to grow your colony to a certain size. So yeah, that's similar to 1-2, that one. Strength, which is an amount of points for defeating enemies. You can actually set the threshold for this as well, by the way. So you can change how many points you need to achieve victory. Survival, which is just survive for X amount of time. By the way, the idea with these as well is the game will get harder as you get closer to the victory condition. So there'll be some difficulty multiplier added as you get closer to the victory condition. I think there will be a mechanic later down the track where you you mean like I'm not quite sure what you mean there, expert archer. If you ideas like that are best discussed in the forum, because ideas for the game, because you can bat them, people can bat them off each other and decide what sounds cool. I made a lot of my decisions on this new Freeplay update based on what people were saying in the forum. Okay, power is just earn an amount of points for doing various things. Hunter, I believe, is to do with Ubers. Yeah, kill a number of Uber creatures. I'm not sure what the maximum you can have there is. 20 by the look of it. That would be a very hard one to do, is killing 20. And Besieged, I believe, is attack wave based. So the idea here is that you can share challenges with each other. But yeah, you can save as, give it a name. Description, and then you can these buttons are just temporary things at the minute, but I'm going to put them in place. But the idea is you get a string here which you can copy to the clipboard, and so you can paste that on forums and such, and then you can import it and accept it, and that should have, yeah, that's appeared there. Although I'm about to solve the problem of these having the same name, which is causing issues. But the idea is that you can share something via a string. For example, wasps randomly resting near your source of food that one-shot your ants and have to go around. Close the window over. That's it. It's better. Roach's beacon. Light towers too. Exciting challenges that make you want to play the game. Oh, I see. I can see what you mean with the beacon flowers, being able to stick ants at the top and hold it to see around. You mean you mean just more interesting stuff on the map that have different things to do. This isn't a map editor as such. This is a it's a game mode editor. I'd liken it a bit to what Overwatch did a while ago, where they had although Overwatch has opened it up even more now, where you could set up custom game modes. But I'll be adding to this as time goes on. Map editor is one of those things that we would absolutely love to do, but the reality of it is that it'd take a long time to make. So again, never say never. Right, what was I doing? I was working on this. Okay, so essentially needs to check whether that name exists. Okay, so we've got an issue here in that it's got to check whether it exists, but then it also needs to run the check again to see if its suggested name exists. It's got to check from the beginning again. Okay. I think essentially when it finds the one that exists, it's going to have to run the loop again. It's probably going to be a nested loop here. Yeah. It's going to be a bit tricky. But I'm going to make this do what I want it to. So okay, so it essentially is going to return. All right, I'm going to change this to a for loop with a break. I'm going to make another function. This function is going to run another function. Is setup name acceptable? Does setup name exist? So I'll come back to the chat in a bit. At the moment I am going to focus on getting a little bit of this done. This may seem a little strange. So I'm essentially moving one function into another. So if it's is equal to the option name, then it does exist. That's not what I want though. If it never gets there, then it doesn't exist. It's going to get a little bit tricky. Probably want a break actually. Okay, so there's an issue here in that if I look for, let's say I'm trying to make a game, a name, a setup called custom. Custom already exists, so it tries to say change it to custom 1. Checks whether that exists. The issue is that if I try and make a game called custom 1 and it finds custom 1, I don't want to then try and make a game called custom 1.1. I instead want to try and make a game called custom 2. So I can't just check the original, then then add 1 to the end and check that. I have to check the original, then check whether the final digit is a number. If the final digit is a number, it should increment the number and go from there rather than. So let's figure out how to get the final digit. I know there's a method for this. Final digit, final character in a string. Let's have a quick look at what utility functions it's got. Append note, builds note, contains note, ends with. Test whether this string ends with given string. Don't think that's what I want. That's not utilities. Takes an array of strings. No. See, that could work because I believe that just splits the string into its individual characters. So I could do that. That could do it. The integer value of the character. No, that's no good. See, that might be the best bet. Okay, that's useful. I'm going to use that. So what was the thing I said I could do? Get substring. Right. This'll work. Well, it might work. Let's test whether it works first before we do anything. We should absolutely test this. Okay, so I'm going to make a test button. Love me a test button. Hello 7. Is setup name acceptable is actually what I'm trying to do. Damn it. Okay. Okay. Actually, at the moment, that won't do much because I haven't... Yeah, the start index is wrong. So I'm expecting this to give me the last character in the string. So it should just say 7. Yep, cool. Next. I think basically if the final character is 9 in the string, it should add a 0 onto the end and keep the current character. So we essentially go up in the tens. Right, coming back to chat for a moment. I know you've been talking a lot since I lost myself in the code. Yeah, so Expert Archie, you mentioned about the trails and things. The trail system, we were discussing this recently actually. It's more reactive, but you don't have much control over the actual trail itself. The problem, it is a problem, and it actually causes us to design levels in specific ways, because you've only got a specific endpoint. I mean, you can move ants around it to a certain extent, a certain number of them, but you have to expect that some will go around the shortest path route, even if the ones at the end of the trail go take one route, the ones coming out of the nest might go a different route. And we do accept that is a problem, and we kind of have to design levels around it, which can be a little bit tricky. And we have discussed the idea of having like multiple point trails, or maybe just two point trails, so you can go around something. But it would require a bit of rewriting in certain areas of the code, and we'll have to see. We'll think about. We will think about it. Yeah, we kind of walk a funny line between RTS and simulation, in a way, because it wouldn't feel right if you had direct control over the ants, but at the same time, it can be a bit frustrating at the minute when the ants go around a route you don't want them to, or whatnot, and it can also be limiting in level design, definitely. Yeah, see you later. Good to have you with us. Yeah, we'll see where we go with the trails. I'm not convinced the trails are the perfect system. Still, I think they work in certain levels. My personal favourite level is 2, I think, and that's because the single point trails work quite well in it, because you still got to decide you've kind of got options above ground and below ground. So you need to make your tunnels below ground. I mean, the trails work very well below ground because you're tunneling out your own tunnels. But above ground in that mission, you've got your left and right sides that you've got to defend. You've got to decide which groups go where. And we definitely, in fact, with 3.1, there's actually navigation modifiers in the level, which is definitely something that's going to be affected by this, by the way, by us creating our own movement stuff. And those navigation modifiers are there to stop ants going. They're there to prevent the ants going the shortest path route. Instead, they'll go the most obvious route from your nest. And certainly the enemy colony's got that. During testing, it did cause some funny behaviours. So the nav modifiers essentially make one path more expensive than it would be if you were just using the shortest distance route. But anyway, as with the game, we're still in early access. Things are still a bit in flux. And still a lot more to come. So moving on. Okay, so that got the last character from the string fine. That worked fine. I think it needs to do a initial test on the name to see if it exists. If it doesn't exist, we go ahead with the return. And that's fine, it just accepts the name and moves on. If it does exist, now this is where things get complicated. So the save game name you tried to save to already exists. Now, I could simply throw up an error, but there's an issue here in that if you're importing someone else's game, someone else's string, I'd rather it just accepted it and put a 1 at the end of it. Mostly so you don't have to edit the string yourself in order to allow the game to be imported. I mean, we could just say edit the string, but yeah, we'll see how difficult this gets. So in this case, it's going to look at the final character in the string. If the final character is numeric, okay, so I'm going to run some more tests. So I'm cutting that out of the loop at the minute. If the final character is numeric, we're going to say numeric. Now, expecting this to happen now. Definitely expecting this to happen. Oh, hang on. It's that. Right, yeah, so it says it's numeric. I'm just going to run another test to make it non-numeric. Just to make sure it's actually working. Okay, cool. It is working. So if it's numeric, we're going to... If it's not numeric, we're going to just put a 1 at the end of it and we're done. So let's so if it's not numeric, and we're done. If it is numeric, this will get slightly trickier. So if it is numeric, we need to essentially try and cycle through versions of it. It can't just say it can't just suggest that name. It's got to check whether it exists. Even that needs to cycle through them. Trying to think what the best way of doing this is. I could literally just add a 1 onto the end. We can end up with 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, etc., etc., going up to an infinite amount of number ones. But that just doesn't seem right. It seems like we need to increment it to me. Don't even know if I need to do this numeric check either. I do actually. I need to do it to okay. Does save game exist? So we need to run this again over here. This is going to be the final thing where it actually starts ticking up through the numbers. So does setup name exist? If false, return that as the suggested one. If true, then we need to start the cycle. For loop with break. Starting from, it's tried 1. The next thing it needs to try is 2. Pretty sure I'm going to eliminate the need for this during doing this, by the way. Does that same save game exist? I'm not sure if I need the break. So normally in C++, if you did a loop like that and you within a function and you returned during the loop, you wouldn't need to worry about the loop running. But I can't remember how blueprints work. I think there's a small chance it might actually run the rest of the loop. Hopefully not. Okay, so attempts it up to 1,000. If you got 1,000, no, hang on. It only needs to attempt it up to 9. I'll think about that when time comes. Maybe it doesn't. Yeah, well, yeah, it's fine. Fine. Okay, so it's going to try this 1,000 times. If ever the save game doesn't exist, it's going to return. If the save game does exist, it needs to run the next iteration of the loop. That should be alright, I think. I also need to add this bit of the code back in. I think we've got to the point where it's fine now. Okay, so that should suggest a name for us. Okay, let's run a test with this. So is setup name acceptable? Did we finish? Does setup name exist? Yeah, we did finish that. Cool. So at the moment of import, where it does all this, that's the setup slot. Where's the name? The name is taken from game save game slot. So here it just saves it at the minute. However, we need to change this so it doesn't just save it. So what was the function that we're using? So I'll come back to chat in a moment. I've got my head buried in this at the minute. Does setup name exist? No, it's not. Wasn't that one? It is setup name acceptable? That was the one. So is setup name acceptable? Put the setup name in. Branch. Okay. So at this point, we've got something to do. So if the setup name is acceptable, we just save it. If the setup name is not acceptable, We're going to set it to the suggested name and get on with our lives. Okay, so what I'm expecting to happen, which it probably won't, because nothing ever happens as you expect in programming, is each time I try and add the same string in, it's just going to add it in, but with an extra number on it. Let me just check. Yeah, then it runs setup. That's fine. That's all fine. Okay, let's test. So, new setup here. We pull the string out. Paste the string in. New setup 1. Paste the string in. New setup 2. Thank goodness this seems to be working. New setup 3. Okay. Okay, yeah. Looks like it's working. I mean, I haven't done enough tests yet at all. Let's see what happens if we get to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah. Right. How much do you play the game? Do you play the game a week? How much do I play the game a week? That really depends on whether we're in a testing period or not. During testing periods, I play it a lot. When we're not in testing periods, I don't tend to play it because of the sheer amount I've played it in the testing periods. Testing a game is, every now and again I play through the game and I'm surprised that I'm enjoying it. Because when you've worked on a game, when you've created a game, you have played it so much that you get a bit sick of it, but usually that's because you're playing tiny aspects of the game and you're testing tiny things as you're going along. But when I actually do get to a testing period and I sit down and play the game from start to finish, writing down the problems as I'm going, I do genuinely enjoy it. And it's I'm always surprised at that point. I'm like, oh, thank goodness the game is still enjoyable. And like for so long, when you're working on, for example, when you're working on the Leafcutter update, and you've got good positive reviews for the previous updates you've released, and you're working on this update, and you're working on it, you think, is this actually fun? Am I still... Is what I'm doing as good as what we did before? And it's not until you get to like the end of it that you can be absolutely sure, where everything's come together. And you're like, yeah, thank goodness this is a fun experience. It's a really odd relationship you have with the game you're making. Really odd. And it's not the only game I play. I don't only play my game. I play a lot of Destiny at the minute. Liam has always played a lot of StarCraft 2, and he's a die-hard StarCraft 2 player. I think Matt does a lot of Switch gaming. Last I spokesman. What was he working on the Switch? He's playing through Stardew Valley on the Switch. There's a couple of other bits and bobs he's playing. So, does it ever get boring? Yes and no. Yeah, Destiny 2. I played Destiny 1 as well. In fact, I played through Destiny 1 again recently to remind myself of the story. I recently had a child, and whilst holding the child sleeping, I played through Destiny 1. I've got like an hour in the morning when I've got the child whilst my wife gets ready for work and before the child goes to nursery. And and often she's asleep, and I just sit down and play PlayStation for half an hour, 45 minutes. I play a lot, and as right now I'm playing Stardew Valley. Yeah, Stardew Valley had me hooked for a while. It can be such an addictive game. Over one of the Christmas periods, I sunk like 100 hours into it. I think I pretty much burnt myself out with it. Right. Stream's coming to an end soon. It's lovely sunshine here today, and I think I'm gonna have a barbecue tonight. Basically, so I can get an excuse to spend some time in the sun. So as you can see, I'm still working on the Freeplay menus. Just to round up what we've said. We are currently working heavily on game optimizations. We've already significantly boosted the performance. Matt was saying in the test he was running, he'd actually doubled the performance. He doubled his frame rate in a specific test he was running. However, we've got another major thing to do, which is an overhaul of the character. We're going to make our own version of the character object in Unreal, so it's more RTS style, and we'll have more information on that over the weekend when the newsletter comes out. And with all these optimizations will be released at the same time as a Freeplay update, and we're going to do another open beta with the Freeplay, particularly as so many of these optimizations will affect a lot of different areas of the game, so people can opt in to play the Freeplay update when we get there, and it should have lots of these optimizations in, allowing you to get a lot more creatures in the level. However, as we do often, we're going to have to ask for patience, because as we dissect the creatures, the character component, it's going to take a little while to get it back together. So yeah, there we go. As a little fun tease, I can show you the Kickstarter the Kickstarter reward model that will be eventually coming into the game. So this was a tier of the Kickstarter backing, and it basically allows you to have Mimicroraptors rather than Formicroraptors, which have a different visual to them. Let me take a look at that model. So yeah, they're a bit more spiky. I believe we'll be doing a queen as well. there's no game. There won't be any gameplay difference. It's just a model update. Well, it's not an update. It's a model option. You'll have the option to have your workers look like this or the current ones. Yeah, Stardew Valley is very addictive. Right. So yeah, I'm going to continue working on Freeplay stuff for a good while now. The menu stuff, I'm getting close. Problem is at the moment is that just figuring everything out that can go wrong with the menu, and it's quite a lot. Particularly now we've got user input. I need to, for example, use semicolons in the string to break it up. So I need to prevent users from putting semicolons in the description or the name of it. I also use. I also need to see what happens if you change some of the numerical values for letters, that sort of thing. All the stuff that could potentially go wrong with string sharing. I need to make sure I weed it out now. But yeah, thanks for joining me for the stream. Next stream, I will try and stream tomorrow. I'm not going to 100% promise it, but I will try and carry on this tomorrow, probably for another hour and a half, something like that. Maybe a bit earlier tomorrow. And then, again, next week, probably Thursday. And we'll see what advances have been made, and and the newsletter should be coming out over the weekend, so we'll see. Also, we'll have some more information in that about the optimizations that are going on. All right, thanks very much for joining, and I will see you next time.